The planet Ithara had once been a jewel of the galaxy. Its skies shimmered with soft purple sunsets. Rivers glimmered like liquid crystal, and its people lived in harmony with the land. But that peace was gone now. Alien warships filled the skies black and glinting, cutting through clouds as easily as a knife through silk. Explosions lit up the horizon. Cities burned and cries of fear and despair echoed across the planet. The Itharans were not warriors. They were thinkers, artists, and scientists. Their weapons were primitive, mostly defensive, and their fleets were small and slow. Against the invading alien armada, they had no chance. Families ran through streets crumbling under fire. Children screamed in terror while parents tried desperately to shield them. It was chaos. And for the first time, the Itharans faced the horrifying truth. They might all die. In the capital city of Arendor, the Council of Leaders gathered in a high chamber, its walls lined with glowing crystals. Elder Valen, the wisest of them all, stared at the projections of the alien ships. His hands trembled. "We cannot fight them," he said quietly. "Our people. They will all die if we do nothing." Another leader, younger and braver, spoke up. "Then we must ask for help. The galaxy is vast. Surely there are others who will answer our call." Valen shook his head. "Most will not. They turn away from suffering. They fear the cost, but we have no choice." His voice cracked as he reached for the ancient crystal that served as a communications device. The crystal had been unused for centuries. No one knew if it still worked. But now, it was their only hope. The Itharans focused their minds and hearts into the crystal. A pulse of light spread across the room, bright and fragile. A message formed in the ether of the galaxy. A call for aid unlike any other. "We are under attack. We cannot defend ourselves. Please, anyone, help us." The message carried across light years of empty space. It reached the eyes of countless civilizations. Some ignored it, others received it and turned away. But somewhere far beyond the borders of known space, humans saw it. On board the human warship Vanguard, Captain Aria Kane studied the signal. She was not a woman easily shaken. Her life had been built in danger and discipline. Yet when she read the plea from Ithara, something stirred deep inside her, a mixture of anger, sorrow, and determination. "They are going to die if we don't move," she said, her voice calm but firm. Her crew, seasoned soldiers and engineers, looked at her for orders. "What do you want to do, Captain?" Lieutenant Jax asked. His brow was furrowed. He had seen battles, but something about this message touched him differently. Arya's eyes glinted with resolve. "We go now. Humanity doesn't stand by while innocents are slaughtered. Prepare the fleet." We jumped to Ithara immediately. In the following minutes, the warship and its accompanying fleet roared to life. Engines thrummed, shields hummed, and weapon systems powered up. Outside the hull, the darkness of space seemed endless, but the human crew did not hesitate. They were heading into danger, into a conflict that was not theirs by right, but it was theirs by choice. Meanwhile, on Ithara, the alien invaders were closing in on the capital. Explosions rocked the streets. Entire neighborhoods were consumed in flames. The Itharans huddled in shelters, crying, praying, and hoping against reason. Elder Valen whispered a prayer he hadn't spoken in decades. "If anyone is out there, hear our plea, save us. Please." Then far above the chaos, a new signal appeared in the Itharan sky. A fleet unlike any they had ever seen. Massive ships, bristling with weapons, cut through space with terrifying precision. Their silhouettes were dark and imposing. The first thought that crossed the minds of the Itharans was fear. Were these new attackers here to destroy them too? But the humans did not attack. They moved with purpose, scanning the battlefield, striking alien ships with surgical precision. It was terrifying, brilliant, and utterly unstoppable. The humans were a force unlike anything Ithara had ever seen, fierce and unyielding. Elder Valen's eyes widened as he watched. Who are they?" he whispered, almost in disbelief. A young Itharan beside him answered quietly, tears streaming down their face. They came for us." Captain Aria Kane's voice echoed through the comms, firm and commanding. "We do not negotiate with murderers. We protect the helpless. That is what humanity does. Move out!" And with that, the humans descended, not for conquest, not for glory, but to save lives. The people of Ithara dared to hope again. The call for aid had been answered, not by diplomats or distant allies, but by the fiercest warriors the galaxy had ever seen. Somewhere in that vastness of space, a single truth shone brighter than the stars. When humanity hears a plea for help, they come, no matter the cost. The sky above Ithara was a dark, burning canvas. Alien warships tore through clouds, their weapons carving craters into the once beautiful cities. The Itharans ran in fear, carrying their wounded, clutching their children, and praying desperately for a miracle. Every second felt like a lifetime. Their defenses were failing. Their hope was fading. Then from the far reaches of the starry void, a shadow moved. It was not a shadow of fear, but of power. Massive ships, black and sleek, appeared out of nowhere, cutting through the darkness of space. Their engines glowed a fierce blue, leaving streaks of light that tore across the alien fleet like swords. The Itharans watched with wide eyes, hearts pounding. What is that? A young Itharan woman gasped. Her hands trembled as she pointed at the approaching fleet. Elder Valen, who had faced many crises in his life, felt his throat tighten. I do not know, he whispered. But perhaps this is our answer. Captain Arya Kane stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, her eyes scanning the battlefield with deadly focus. Lock weapons on the nearest threats, she ordered. Protect the civilians at all costs. Fire only when necessary, but make it count. Her voice was calm, yet every syllable carried the weight of determination. Her crew moved with practiced precision. Guns roared, missiles streaked through space, and alien ships began to shatter under the precision strikes of the humans. The invaders had expected an easy conquest, but they were not prepared for the Deathworlders. The humans fought with an intensity that was terrifying and beautiful, swift and unyielding. In the streets below, the Itharans could hardly believe their eyes. Alien ships exploded in brilliant bursts of light, yet no human vessel seemed to falter. They moved through the battlefield like ghosts, appearing, striking, and vanishing again before the enemy could respond. The Itharans whispered among themselves, fear slowly turning into awe. A mother clutched her child and murmured, "Are they gods?" Her voice quivered with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Her child looked up at the ships, eyes wide. "No, Mama," the child said. "They are humans. They came for us." On board the human ships, the battle raged with precision and coordination. Lieutenant Jax piloted his fighter through a storm of alien fire, dodging energy beams that could tear through the hull in an instant. His heart pounded, but he felt no fear. "We don't run," he whispered. "We don't surrender. We protect those who cannot protect themselves." Captain Kane's words echoed in his mind. Humanity did not fight for glory. They did not fight for conquest. They fought because it was right. And now, millions of light years from their home, they were doing exactly that, saving an entire civilization from annihilation. The aliens tried to regroup, forming tight formations and firing relentlessly at the human fleet. But the humans adapted instantly, anticipating moves, countering attacks, and using the terrain of space to their advantage. Even asteroid fields became traps for the enemy. The Deathworlders had turned the battlefield into a place where only one side could survive. Elder Valen watched from the command tower as alien ships were torn apart one by one. His hands shook, tears streaming down his face. We are saved," he whispered. His voice carried through the halls, and Itharans around him fell to their knees, overcome by relief. For the first time in days, they dared to breathe. Amidst the destruction, a human medic team landed near a Itharan shelter. They moved quickly, carrying the injured and comforting the frightened. One human soldier held a trembling child in his arms, whispering soothing words. The Itharans had never seen such courage, such mercy, and such strength combined. Captain Kane watched the rescue efforts on the monitors, her face softening. "We are here to protect," she said quietly. "Not to conquer, not to judge, to protect." The words were simple, but they carried the unshakable truth of humanity's essence. The aliens, realizing they were losing control, began to retreat. Their formations broke apart. Fear replaced arrogance in their eyes. They had underestimated the humans. They had assumed weakness, but instead, they faced the unrelenting fury of beings who thrived in the harshest conditions, Deathworlders who refused to let innocents die. In the streets, Itharans emerged cautiously from hiding. They saw the humans moving among the wreckage, tending the wounded, extinguishing fires, and rebuilding what they could. Their fear had transformed into wonder, awe, and gratitude. Children pointed at the soldiers and whispered to each other, "They came for us. They saved us." Elder Valen raised his hands to the sky, tears flowing freely. "Thank you. Thank you," he murmured. "You answered when no one else would." Captain Kane, standing tall on the bridge of the Vanguard, felt a surge of quiet pride. She knew. The battle was not over, but this first moment mattered. Humanity had arrived not as conquerors but as saviors. And in that moment, Ithera learned something it would never forget. When humans hear a plea for help, they do not wait. They do not hesitate, they come, and they fight with a fury that can topple stars themselves. The skies above Ithera began to clear, the alien fleet retreating into the darkness. The humans hovered above, their presence a shield, their determination unbroken. And below, a planet that had once been on the brink of destruction dared to hope again. The battle over Ithera was over, but the planet still shook with the echoes of destruction. Smoke rose from the cities like black rivers, and fires burned stubbornly in the streets. Buildings were flattened, bridges collapsed, and the rivers ran dark with debris. For the Itherans, the cost of survival was written everywhere in ruin. Humans moved carefully through the wreckage, their boots heavy but steady. Soldiers carried the injured from crumbling buildings. Medics tended to burns and broken limbs, and engineers assessed damage to ensure the remaining structures would not collapse further. Despite their victories in space, the humans knew the war was far from over. Lieutenant Jax walked beside Captain Arya Kane, his face pale beneath the helmet. He had seen the fleet tear through alien ships, watched explosions light up the void, and yet, in the aftermath, he felt a different kind of sorrow. "We saved them. But at what cost?" he asked quietly. His voice carried the weight of grief, the burden of all lives lost despite their best efforts. Captain Kane didn't answer immediately. She looked out at the city, at the terrified faces of those who had survived. "War always has a cost," she said finally, her voice low but steady. "We do what we can. We save who we can, and we carry the memory of those we couldn't." Nearby, a human engineer lifted the body of a young Itharan boy from beneath rubble. The child's eyes were closed, and his small hand rested limply on the ground. The engineer whispered a prayer that wasn't of any faith but of hope. He would not forget this, he promised himself. No human would. The Itharans watched quietly, many still in shock. Some had never seen humans before. Now they were learning that humans did not flee from danger. Humans did not calculate whether helping was worth the risk. Humans stepped in, even when the odds were impossible, and they paid a price for it. One elder, trembling, approached Captain Kane. "Your people, they risk their lives for us," he said. "Even now, after the battle, they continue to help. Why do you care so much for us?" Kane's eyes softened, though the resolve in her voice did not falter. "Because we are humans," she said simply. "We survive where others fail. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is who we are." Lieutenant Jax knelt beside the same elder and added quietly, "We do not do this for praise. We do it because it is right, even when it hurts. Even when it costs us everything." Across the city, the Itharan children began to emerge from hiding. They ran to the humans, clinging to their legs, crying and smiling all at once. A young girl tugged at a soldier's sleeve and whispered, "Thank you. You saved us." The soldier crouched down and smiled, ruffling her hair gently. "It's our job," he said softly, though inside his heart ached at all he had seen. The humans had proven their might in battle, but they had also shown mercy. They were protectors, not conquerors. They were saviors, and the Itharans began to understand that the same hands that could destroy enemies with terrifying precision could also cradle the innocent, mend the broken, and comfort the grieving. Even so, the aftermath weighed heavily. The Vanguard had taken damage during the battle. One ship, the Resolute, had barely escaped destruction, its hull scarred, its crew exhausted. Captain Kane walked through the corridors, checking on each team. Faces were grim, some hidden behind masks, some pale and shaken. Every soldier carried the memory of what they had seen, what they had done, and what they had lost. Jax paused by a window, looking down at the fires still burning in Arendor. "We fight, we save, and yet we can't save everyone," he murmured. His hands trembled slightly. Kane placed a hand on his shoulder. "And yet we saved thousands. That is no small thing. We honor the fallen by protecting the living. That is all we can do." Outside, the Itharans began to clear the streets, slowly repairing what they could. Humans worked alongside them, showing how to rebuild, how to tend to wounds, and how to organize relief. For the first time in days, laughter pierced the air. Not loud, not free of sorrow, but fragile and beautiful. Even in destruction, hope had returned. The humans had arrived when no one else would. They had faced impossible odds, fought with a fury that could terrify armies. and yet still remembered the value of every single life. Elder Valen knelt on the ground, tears streaming down his face as he looked at the humans. "Your bravery, your mercy, your heart," he whispered almost in disbelief. "We are alive because of you." Captain Kane turned away from him, her eyes scanning the horizon. More alien ships could come. More battles could rage. But she felt no fear, only determination. Humanity had answered the call. They had shown what it meant to be unyielding, fierce, and merciful all at once. And they would continue to fight for those who could not fight for themselves, no matter the cost. For Ithara, the battle had been won. But the memory of human courage, the sight of Deathworlders risking everything for strangers, would linger forever. And somewhere deep in the hearts of the humans there was an unspoken promise. As long as cries for help existed, they would answer them. Always the streets of Arendor were still smoldering, but the fires were dying down and a fragile calm had settled over Ithara. The Itharans emerged slowly from their hiding places, blinking at the human soldiers and engineers moving among the rubble. To them, humans seemed almost like beings from another world, fierce, tireless, and utterly devoted to protecting the helpless. Human medics worked tirelessly, lifting injured Itharans from the ruins and applying bandages, pulling splintered debris from shattered limbs. One medic, a young man named Rylan, gently cradled a small girl whose leg had been broken by falling rubble. The girl's tears streaked her face, but when he smiled and whispered, "You're safe now," she allowed herself a small, trembling smile. Rylan felt a quiet warmth in his chest, a reminder that despite the horrors of war, life could still matter. Across the city, engineers climbed over collapsed buildings, clearing debris and setting up temporary shelters. Sparks flew as they worked tirelessly, their tools humming and whirring. A human named Tessa lifted a heavy beam with the help of a grav lift, sweat pouring down her face. When a Ytharan elder gasped at the sight, she waved it off with a simple smile. "We've done harder things before," she said. "We can handle this too." Children, once huddled in fear, began to peek out from behind walls and under tables. They whispered excitedly to each other as they watched the humans move, their bravery shining through even in the smallest acts. Rescuing a trapped cat, carrying water to the wounded, calming crying infants. To the Ytharans, these actions were nothing short of heroic. Lieutenant Jax walked through a neighborhood, helping to clear rubble alongside a small group of Ytharan volunteers. A child ran up to him, clutching a toy that had survived the destruction. "Are you really a human soldier?" the child asked wide-eyed. Jax knelt and smiled, ruffling the child's hair gently. "Yes," he said, "but today we're not soldiers. We're helpers. That's all anyone needs to be right now." The child beamed, holding up the toy as if it were a medal. Even amidst the devastation, humanity's character shone. Soldiers who had spent hours fighting in space now lifted beams, carried supplies, and comforted the grieving. They didn't seek recognition or thanks. They did what needed to be done because it was right. In the central square of Arendor, a group of human medics and soldiers had gathered. They were tending to the worst injuries, coordinating supplies, and calming those who had lost everything. Captain Kane arrived, walking among them quietly, her eyes scanning the area. She paused beside a Ytharan mother who held a child too young to understand the tragedy around them. "You've done so much already," the mother said softly, tears in her eyes. "But why? Why do you risk your lives for us?" Kane knelt beside her, her hands resting gently on the woman's shoulders. "Because someone has to," she said. "Because we believe lives are worth saving. Because we survive, and in surviving we protect others. That is what humanity does." From the rooftops, the remaining alien drones had been destroyed, but the humans remained vigilant. They patrolled the skies and streets, ensuring no surprise attacks could harm the Itharans. To the locals, the humans were unstoppable, but also merciful. Every act of violence was measured, every life taken only when necessary. They were terrifying in battle, but tender in protection. A small boy approached the human squad carrying water and rations he had gathered with the help of his friends. "We want to help," he said shyly. One of the soldiers knelt and accepted the supplies with a nod of gratitude. "Every little bit helps," she said warmly. "You're already helping more than you know." By nightfall, temporary shelters had been set up, wounded were stabilized, and fires had been mostly extinguished. The Itharans began to smile, laugh, and even sing softly as they moved among the humans who had saved them. It was a fragile joy, but it was real. Elder Valen walked among the streets, observing the humans with awe. "These beings," he whispered to a young assistant, "they are monsters. Monsters who fight for life, who endure suffering to protect others. We may never see courage like this again." The humans themselves said little, focusing on their work, but in quiet moments they shared small smiles, brief nods, and the silent satisfaction of a job well done. They had come to a dying planet, faced impossible odds, and had chosen to protect the innocent rather than stand idle. Captain Kane looked up at the night sky, stars twinkling above the battered city. She thought of the humans who had risked everything, who had fought through death and destruction, and who now worked tirelessly to heal. Humanity was fierce, relentless, and unyielding, but it was also compassionate, kind, and patient. And as the first stars of evening reflected in the rivers of Ithara, the humans and Yitharans alike realized something profound. Courage was not only measured in battle. True heroism lay in acts of care, mercy, and selfless action. The Deathworlders had come to save lives, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what humanity could truly be. For Ithara, these unlikely heroes would never be forgotten. And for humanity, this was only the beginning of a long journey to remind the galaxy. When the helpless call, the Deathworlders answer, relentlessly, fearlessly, and with a heart that could not be broken. The smoke had mostly cleared, but the scent of burning wood and scorched metal still hung in the air. Ithara was scarred. Streets were cracked, buildings reduced to rubble, and the once beautiful gardens now looked like ash-strewn fields. Yet amidst the destruction, a quiet hope was rising. The humans had won the battle, but more importantly, they had given the Yitharans a chance to live. Captain Arya Kane walked through the city with Lieutenant Jax by her side. Their boots crunched over broken stone and scattered debris. Everywhere they looked, humans and Yitharans worked side by side. Civilians were being carried from damaged shelters. Children were given blankets and food. The injured received medical attention with careful hands. The humans moved as a single unit, organized, efficient, and unwavering, like a wave that refused to be broken. Jax paused by a small crater where a building had collapsed. Inside, a group of Yitharans had been trapped, but now they were safe, thanks to the relentless efforts of human rescue teams. He shook his head in awe and sorrow. "We saved them. But look at all the destruction," he said quietly. It's overwhelming." Kane placed a hand on his shoulder. "We didn't cause this," she said softly. "We are here to help. That is all that matters now. We fight where we are needed, and we rebuild where we can." Even in their exhaustion, humans did not rest. Soldiers carried water to distant shelters. Medics worked late into the night, and engineers rigged makeshift bridges to allow Yitharans to cross damaged streets. Every act of care, no matter how small, reminded the locals that they were not abandoned, that someone had answered their plea. In a quiet square, Elder Valen watched humans helping his people, their faces calm and determined despite the exhaustion that weighed on their bodies. He whispered to a young assistant, "Their strength is not just in battle. Their courage, their compassion, it is unmatched. They do not fight for glory or gain. They fight for life itself." The Yitharans began to speak of the humans in hushed, reverent tones. Stories of bravery spread quickly. Of soldiers who carried the injured through flames, of medics who worked through the night without complaint, of engineers who lifted tons of rubble to save a single child. These stories became a new kind of legend, one that inspired hope in the hearts of a broken people. A small boy approached a human soldier, holding out a hand-drawn picture of a human ship. "Thank you," he whispered, eyes wide. The soldier knelt and smiled. "You don't have to thank us," she said gently. "We do what must be done. Just promise me you'll keep helping each other." The boy nodded, tears glimmering in his eyes. Not all humans were in uniform. Some were volunteers from the fleet, ordinary people who had left their homes and families to assist strangers on a distant planet. They carried supplies, comforted the scared, and worked tirelessly. Their presence reminded the Yitharans that heroism was not always about fighting. It was about action, courage, and caring for others even when it is hard. On board the Vanguard, Captain Kane watched the monitors showing the progress of relief teams. She allowed herself a rare moment to breathe, her mind reflecting on the battle and its aftermath. Thousands of lives had been saved. Hundreds of soldiers had been tested in combat. And yet, For all the victory, she knew this was just one small battle in a galaxy that would always have darkness to challenge the light. Lieutenant Jax joined her, looking at the displays silently. "Do you ever wonder," he asked quietly, "if anyone else would have come? If it had been another species, would they have answered the call?" Kane shook her head slowly. "Probably not.
Humanity is
different. We step in when others step back. We risk ourselves for those who cannot defend themselves. That is our way. That is who we are." Outside, Itharans began to rebuild. Families helped each other clear debris. Children planted flowers where gardens had been destroyed. Artists began to sketch the human soldiers who had saved their lives, immortalizing their courage in drawings and murals. Every act of recovery, no matter how small, was a promise to the future, a promise that they would not forget the humans who had saved them. As night fell, the city was quiet but alive. The fires had mostly died, and a soft, warm light glowed from temporary shelters. Humans patrolled the streets, ensuring safety, while medics continued their work. For the Itharans, this was more than protection, it was a symbol. Humanity had not come for conquest or profit. They had come for life itself. Elder Valan stood in the central square, gazing at the humans moving among his people. "We will never forget you," he whispered. "You are our protectors, our heroes, our saviors." Captain Kane, standing at the edge of the square, felt the weight of the words, but also the quiet pride that came from duty done well. The battle had been fought, the lives had been saved, and humanity had proven once again what it meant to be fierce, relentless and merciful all at once. Somewhere across the galaxy, the story of Ithara would travel, spreading the legend of humans who risked everything for strangers. But for now, on this small planet scarred by war, one truth shone clearly. When humans hear a plea for help, they do not hesitate, they answer, and they bring hope. The news of humanity's arrival at Ithara spread faster than any message the galaxy had ever known. Across star systems, across fleets and civilizations, whispers began. Humans, the Deathworlders, they fight for the helpless. Some heard the tale in fear, imagining what such warriors could do in anger. Others heard it with awe, inspired by the courage and mercy humans had shown. On Ithara, the streets were quiet now. The city had begun to rebuild, and children played among the repaired streets. But in the hearts of every Itharan there remained a memory, vivid and alive. The humans who had arrived when no one else would. The Deathworlders who had faced impossible odds without hesitation. They had seen death and destruction, and yet humanity had brought life and hope. Captain Arya Kane walked through a quiet street, observing her crew as they distributed food and water to villagers. Soldiers who had spent days in battle now helped to repair homes, carry supplies, and comfort those traumatized by the attack. Kane's mind wandered to the broader galaxy. Other civilizations will know our actions here. They will see what humanity is capable of. Lieutenant Jax, standing beside her, smiled quietly. "Do you think they understand?" he asked. "Do you think the galaxy will really see us?" Kane nodded slowly. "They will. The story will travel. The galaxy remembers deeds as much as words. When humans act, when we answer a call for help, it is not forgotten. That is our strength." Across distant stars, messages were received and transmitted. Merchant worlds, once indifferent to the plight of others, whispered about the humans who dared to challenge alien fleets and defend a helpless species. Council members on bureaucratic planets debated the news, their faces pale with concern and curiosity. They had underestimated humans before. Now they were forced to reconsider. On a planet light years away, a young diplomat watched the holofeed showing human soldiers carrying children to safety. Her mentor, a stern and cautious figure, shook his head. "They do not fight for territory. They do not fight for profit. They fight because it is right to fight. That is dangerous and extraordinary." Meanwhile, on Ithara, life slowly returned to a fragile normal. Markets reopened, homes were repaired, and schools began to welcome children again. Yet, in every classroom, stories were told about the humans. Children drew pictures of the black ships that had cut through the alien fleet like a storm, of the soldiers who had risked their lives, and of Captain Kane, standing tall amidst chaos. The legend of the Deathworlders was born. Elder Valan addressed a small gathering in the central square, his voice firm and emotional. "We were saved when no one else came. We were saved by beings we did not know, from a species we had never encountered. They are fierce, yes, but also merciful. They fight for life. That is humanity. That is what we must remember. Back aboard the Vanguard, Kane reviewed reports from the fleet. Every ship, every crew member had performed beyond expectation. They had struck fear into the alien invaders, saved thousands of lives, and yet they were already preparing for the next call. Humans did not rest long. Duty was never over. Mercy demanded action. Courage demanded presence. Lieutenant Jax glanced at her, admiration clear in his eyes. "Do you ever worry," he asked softly, "that the galaxy will always fear us more than it admires us?" Kane's eyes were steady, filled with quiet confidence. "They will fear us," she said simply, "and they will admire us. But both fear and respect are earned through action, through courage, through choices that matter. That is what makes humanity human." The humans remained on Ithara for weeks, helping to rebuild infrastructure, train local emergency responders, and provide knowledge the Itharans could never have gained on their own. Each day the legend of their deeds grew, spreading across neighboring systems as survivors and travelers shared their stories. And somewhere, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, other civilizations took note. Some wondered if humans were allies to be trusted. Some wondered if humans were forces too dangerous to ignore. But all understood one truth. When a call for help went unanswered, humanity answered. When hope seemed lost, humans appeared, relentless, fearless, and merciful. On Ithara, children played under the watchful eyes of human soldiers, laughter echoing through streets that had once known only fear. Elder Valon looked on, tears of gratitude in his eyes. "We have witnessed a miracle," he said softly. "Not just because our lives were spared, but because we saw the heart of humanity. Fierce, unyielding, and compassionate all at once. The galaxy will never forget this day." Captain Kane, standing on a rebuilt balcony overlooking the city, felt a quiet pride that had nothing to do with victory. It was a pride born of duty fulfilled, of lives saved, and of hope restored. The galaxy had begun to see the truth about humans. They were not conquerors. They were protectors. They were the Deathworlders, terrifying in battle, merciful in action, and unstoppable when defending the helpless. As the stars twinkled over Ithara, Kane knew the galaxy would remember this day. And she also knew deep in her heart that humanity's story was only beginning. Wherever the helpless cried, wherever the innocent were in danger, humans would come. They always did. Years had passed since the battle for Ithara, but the memory of humanity's arrival remained vivid in every heart. The planet had healed in ways both visible and unseen. Buildings were rebuilt, gardens bloomed again, and the streets were alive with laughter. But more than that, hope had been restored. The Itharans carried a new understanding of courage, mercy, and strength, lessons taught to them by the humans who had come when no one else would. Captain Arya Kane stood on the balcony of a rebuilt command tower, overlooking the city she had helped save. The wind carried the scents of flowers planted in once-burned gardens. Children ran through the streets, playing freely, their laughter ringing like music across the square. Kane's eyes softened as she watched, remembering the terrified faces she had seen when her fleet first arrived. The contrast was staggering. Life had returned. Humanity had brought it back. Lieutenant Jax approached quietly, his gaze following the children. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "They're alive. They're happy. And it's because of us." Kane nodded, her eyes still on the horizon. "Because we did what needed to be done," she said. "Not because of glory, not because of reward, because it was right. The humans had not stayed for accolades. They had repaired what they could, trained the Itharans in defense, and prepared them to survive future threats." Then, as silently as they had arrived, the fleet departed, leaving behind a planet forever changed. The Itharans waved, tears in their eyes, and Kane felt a quiet pride stronger than any battlefield victory. Across the galaxy, the story of Ithara's salvation became legend. Systems once indifferent to the suffering of others now spoke of the Deathworlders, the humans who answered cries for help when hope had vanished. Some civilizations feared them, others revered them. All knew that humans were a force unlike any other, unyielding in battle, unstoppable in determination, and merciful in heart. In the years that followed, whenever a planet called for aid, humans answered. Not for power, not for conquest, but because it was their nature to act when others could not. They became a symbol, A story told from world to world, generation to generation. They were protectors, warriors, saviors, Deathworlders who would not allow injustice to go unchallenged. On Ythara, Elder Valen stood before a gathering of children, telling the story of humanity's arrival. They were fierce, he said, voice steady, eyes shining, but also kind. They fought when others would have fled. They saved lives when no one else dared, and they taught us something more than survival. They taught us courage, mercy, and hope. A child raised her hand. Will they come again if we need them? She asked. Valen smiled gently. If the galaxy cries for help, the humans will come. They have always done so. That is their promise, even if unspoken. That is their legacy. Back aboard the Vanguard, Captain Kane looked at the stars, her mind reflecting on the countless cries for help across the galaxy that humans had answered and would answer in the future. She thought of every crew member, every soldier who had risked everything, and every civilian who had contributed in ways both great and small. Humanity had been tested many times, and each time, it had proven itself capable of impossible feats of mercy beyond reason, of courage beyond fear. Lieutenant Jack stood beside her, glancing at the starfield stretching infinitely before them. Do you think the galaxy understands who we are? He asked softly. Kane's eyes were steady, full of quiet certainty. They will. Some will fear us, some will admire us, but all will know this truth. When humanity hears a plea for help, we do not hesitate. We come, and we fight for the helpless, for the innocent, for life itself. That is who we are. That is humanity. Across the universe, somewhere a new distress signal pulsed, faint but desperate. On the Vanguard, the crew noticed immediately. Kane's lips curved into a determined smile. Set course, she ordered. We have work to do. As the fleet jumped into the void, leaving the stars behind, one truth remained undeniable. Humanity's legend was not built in victories alone, but in every life they had saved, every act of courage, every choice to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. They were fierce, unyielding, and compassionate all at once, and the galaxy would never forget. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, but in every system the tale of the Deathworlders echoed. When hope is lost, when cries go unanswered, humanity answers. Fierce in battle, merciful in spirit, unstoppable in resolve. Captain Kane looked at her crew, proud, determined, and unshaken. Let's go, she said softly. There are lives that need saving, and we are humans. We always answer the call. And somewhere across countless worlds, the legacy of humanity, the Deathworlders, continued to grow, one act of courage at a time.